of choice is ours. Old programming will lead to the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same actions, all from the same choices. So how do we get out of it? We make some conscious new what? Choices, that's right. New choices led me to my first biohacking conference. I met and learned from the world thought leaders in health, nutrition, epigenetics, longevity medicine, and I walked away with a new approach to life and medicine. Most importantly, I learned that how we live our life is medicine. New choices also drove me to do a deep dive on longevity medicine and epigenetics, which led me to the work of this gentleman, Dan Boitner. In the early 2000s, he and his team was given a monumental task to reverse and engineer aging and disease. So they traveled all around the world to see where people were living the longest. Where were the highest concentrations of people living over 100? They found 5. They called them the blue zones. And they actually uncovered ancient wisdom and principles as to why these people were living so long. They moved all day. They had rituals to deal with stress. They didn't stuff themselves with food. They occasionally celebrated with wine. They had deep connection with friends, family, and a tribe. And they all had purpose. Now, the people in the blue zones didn't seek out to be the longest lived people on the planet. It was actually just a byproduct of how they chose to live, but more importantly, who they chose to be. But how do our choices affect biology? Well, the science of epigenetics tells us that the fate of our cells, our cellular phenotype, our performance and longevity isn't determined by the genes that reside in the cell, but actually how these genes interact with its cellular environment. Can our choices change our cellular environment? I looked at telomeres. Telomeres are the end caps of our DNA that protect the DNA from fraying every time a cell divides. Preserved telomeres are a marker for longevity. Shortened telomeres are a marker for disease and a shortened lifespan. We know that stress is the major driver of telomere shortening, whereas choices like diet, sleep, nutrition, movement, community, stress reduction, and purpose preserve telomeres. Again, the choices that we make in the organism level changes the state of our cellular environment, which then talks to our DNA. I then looked at another marker for longevity and disease, one being the CTRA. This is one of the cell danger responses. You see, what happens is when we perceive stress, such as loneliness, such an argument with your spouse, such as resenting somebody who's hurt you, it basically changes the state of the cellular environment. And what happens here? Inflammatory genes go up, immunity genes go down. And that sets the stage for creating diseases such as heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, viral infections. What turns off this process? Choices. Diet, sleep, nutrition, movement, community, sense of purpose. In fact, the more I started to study longevity medicine and performance, I started to see the exact same patterns. Whether it was the ancient wisdom from the blue zones, the telomeres, the CTRAs, or even epigenetic clocks, I started to see the same categories of things that most affected human biology. It is our choices that create this bioenergetic state, this state in our body, and that ultimately changes the cellular environment, which then speaks to our cells, and that determines cellular health, longevity, and performance. And this bioenergetic state we create doesn't only affect every single aspect of our physiology, but it permeates outwards and felt by others as well. The power of choice is ours. When we start to make choices that favor our optimal cellular health, we create this vibrant state in our body. I call it the thrive state. And that ultimately leads to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. When we make choices that diminish our cellular health, we create this stressful state in our body that creates inflammation, drop in immunity, chronic symptoms, and chronic disease. So let's take a look at this bioenergetic model to see how my old programming gave me disease. Let's start here. Mental. What did my old programming tell me? I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. So I was constantly striving for success. I put myself first rather than helping others. Poor spiritual state. Let me put on the mask of this white coat. You interact with me through there. This doctor, rather than showing you who I am, authentically and vulnerably. Poor social state. Where do you think my emotions were? Stress, worry, anxiety, fear, which led me not to eat, sleep, move very well, and pick up a lot of unhealthy habits. The choices that I made created a bioenergetic state in my body. Which one was it? Stress and survive. Increased inflammation, lower immunity, chronic symptoms, chronic disease. But the power of choice is ours. Ishmael gave me the opening of making some new choices. I started to eat, sleep, and move better. Guess what? My biochemistry, my hormones started to change. I started to feel better. I started to feel happy. I started to feel alive, emotional. With this new vibe, I was attracting a tribe, and I got the girl. Yes, social. I wanted to share everything I learned about health and wellness and biohacking with others, spiritual. And I finally came to believe that everything in my life happens for me, not to me. And that my story, my biography, actually dictates my biology. When I started to make more conscious choices, particularly in these areas of my life, as I got into the Thrive state and then combined it with anti-aging, regenerative medicine, and biohacking, I was able to reverse all my conditions in a very short period of time, get rid of all the prescription medications, lose the inflammatory visceral fat, and biologically age backwards. I like it. Thank you very much. The power of choice is ours. Here's the one cool thing about this bioenergetic model. When you just make one choice in your life and you turn that into a habit, you actually elevate your state, and that will permeate into other areas of your life. So let me ask you right now, what one easy choice can you make and commit to? Is it physical, emotional, mental, social? What about spiritual? Purpose. Pablo Picasso said, the meaning of life is to find your gift, but the purpose of life is to give it away. I only think he's partially right. Who's this guy? I think it's more of a process of remembering than finding. You know, I used to be a kid that just loved making people laugh and make them feel good. You see, when you remember the things that bring you joy, when you remember the things that light you up and put you in those positive anti-aging emotional states, that's the authentic you. And when you share you, that authentic you with the world, that's it. That's your purpose. Your purpose is you. You are the gift. Purpose can also come from all the struggles, the obstacles, and challenges we've been gifted with in life, because we can grow from them. Because the more we grow, the more we can give. Look, I know it won't always be easy to make the right choice, particularly with that default mode network lurking around. But when you're conscious of it, you have access to new possibilities. So even when it's hard, the power of choice is ours. There's a quote I love from Viktor Frankl. If you don't know who he is, he's a Holocaust survivor. He saw his family members and friends murdered and tortured, but he still had this to say. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And on our response lies our growth and freedom. So every time that old programming comes up, I want you to create space and act. Every time you have that craving, every time you're feeling lazy on the couch, every time your spouse triggers you, create space by going for a walk out in nature, by doing a brain tap session, maybe a 6-phase meditation, or if you don't have time, 10 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in that space, I want you to act, which is A, have awareness of what's going on. Is it that old programming? Is it that story of I'm not worthy? Or that belief that I'll never lose weight because of my genetics? Or maybe your spouse triggered that wound of not being enough. Have that awareness of old programming to choose anyway. What is in your Thrive state? How do you want to show up? What was in that success reel? Choose from that place. Do you want to be happy, joyous, giving, nurturing, playful? Whatever it is, choose powerfully, then immediately take action. Maybe it looks like saying, honey, I reacted again. I'm sorry, that was old programming. I want us to be loving and connected. Can we just take a few minutes and start over? You choose curiosity over judgment. You choose serving rather than taking. You choose forgiveness over resentment. And the more and more you make these new choices over old programming, you are rewiring your entire body and nervous system into the thrive state, and you're upgrading your operating system. This is a process I've learned to go through every time something challenges me. Back in the ICU, I was thinking, why is this thing happening to me? I wanted to blame the doctors, I wanted to blame the hospitals. Then I take 10 deep breaths. I create space. I have the awareness that I'm reacting. I choose to believe that everything is happening for me, not to me. And then I take action by asking the question, how is this thing happening for me? Where is the gift in this moment? And I swear to God, right when I asked that question, the nurse says, Dr. Vuu, do you want to hold your baby for the first time? So I held her in my arms. And I looked down at her. She had a tube down her nose, a tube down her mouth. She had IVs all over her arms. I just remember thinking, health complication or not, she is absolutely perfect the way she is. And then my heart just cracked open. And I was just reminded of how precious life is and how each and every one of us who's been gifted with this life is more than enough and absolutely worthy of love. Even me. And then this huge wave of healing just overcame me and washed away some of that not enoughness that's been lingering. Happening for me, not to me. And here's an update. This is Kaya. She's 20 months old now. She's very happy, very healthy. Fancy car or not. The power of choice is ours. What would the world look like if more and more of us created a little bit of space and made more conscious choices about the state that we live in? What if more and more of us were in the thrive state? You see, when you elevate your state, when you elevate your vibration, that energy is not just felt inwardly, but it goes outwardly to others. Your children, my children, the planet will have new access to this energy, this vibration, this new programming. So make the choice you want to see in the world, because you can become a new blue zone. And remember to create a beautiful masterpiece of a life. That's the art of living. And that's the best biohack you can do for yourself and for humanity. Thank you.